Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Kauravani Pachaline Nivasesha Sunyavadi Pashtatar Satarine Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sadi Kaura Bhaktivinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare. Okay, so here we are, great historical moment in our readings, chapter 1 of Bhagavad Gita. And interestingly, Nishin Kavacha Prabhu told me that the introduction that we just read, it's actually transposed, or it's free of Prabhupada's lectures, which he gave in New York, I guess in 1966. So it's just, not just, it's very amazing, but just for information, that was 3 or 4 lectures or perhaps more that Prabhupada had transcribed and then included that as the introduction. Wow. Well, I had in mind that Prabhupada sat there and wrote out an introduction, but no, he dictated it, or he spoke it as 3 classes on the Bhagavad Gita, or perhaps more. So then we enter into chapter 1, observing the armies on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. So as I said, I'll be looking at some commentaries, but specifically coming from Burijan Prabhu in his Surrender Unto Me, where he often pulls on commentaries from different acharyas, sometimes given an interesting different insight into what's being spoken. So as we're reading through this, perhaps we'll stop and highlight some of the points which are there. Yes, so let's begin. So Mother Sachau, you have your hand up there. Perhaps we can have a go or a try at reading the Sanskrit. How does everyone feel about that? The Dhamma's is quite easy, and it's a lot easier than other.
I think the Gita verses should be quite reasonably easy to read.
Yeah, so let's, because it's nice, and it's an easy meter, as we said, and so let's just see how we go. So Sahachari Mother, you can begin.
Chapter 1, Observing the Armies on the Battlefield of Kurukshetra. Dhrtarastra Uvacha, Dharmakshetre Kurukshetre Samaveta Yutsava Mamaka Pandavaschaiva Kim Akurvata Sanjaya. Dhrtarastra said, O Sanjaya, after my sons and the sons of Pandu assembled in the place of pilgrimage at Kurukshetra, desiring to fight, what did they do? Purport. Bhagavad Gita is the widely read theistic science summarized in the Gita Mahatyam, glorification of the Gita. There it says that one should read Bhagavad Gita very scrutinizingly with the help of a person who is a devotee of Sri Krishna and try to understand it without personally motivated interpretations. The example of clear understanding is there in the Bhagavad Gita itself, in the way the teachings is understood by Arjuna, who heard the Gita directly from the Lord. If someone is fortunate enough to understand the Bhagavad Gita in that line of disciplic succession, without motivated interpretation, then he surpasses all studies of Vedic wisdom and all scriptures of the world. One will find in the Bhagavad Gita all that is contained in other scriptures, but the reader will also find things which are not to be found elsewhere. That is the specific standard of the Gita. It is the perfect theistic science because it is directly spoken by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Sri Krishna. The topics discussed by Dhrtarastra and Sanjaya, as described in the Mahabharata, form the basic principle for this great philosophy. It is understood that this philosophy evolved on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, which is a sacred place of pilgrimage from the immemorial time of the Vedic age. It was spoken by the Lord when he was present personally on this planet for the guidance of mankind. The word Dharmakshetra, a place where religious rituals are performed, is significant because on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, the Supreme Personality of Godhead was present on the side of Arjuna. Dhrtarastra, the father of the Kurus, was highly doubtful about the possibility of his son's ultimate victory. In his doubt, he inquired from his secretary Sanjaya, what did they do? He was confident that both his sons and the sons of his younger brother Pandu were assembled in that field of Kurukshetra for a determined engagement of the war. Still, his inquiry is significant. He did not want a compromise between the cousins, and he wanted to be sure of the fate of his sons on the battlefield, because the battle was arranged to be fought at Kurukshetra, which is mentioned elsewhere in the Vedas as a place of worship. Even for the denizens of heaven, Dhritarashtra became very fearful about the influence of the holy place on the outcome of the battle. He knew very well that this would influence Arjuna and the sons of Pandu favorably because by nature they are all virtuous. Sanjaya was a student of Vyasa, and therefore by the mercy of Vyasa, Sanjaya was able to envision the battlefield of Kurukshetra even while he was in the room of Dhritarashtra. And so Dhritarashtra asked him about the situation on the battlefield. Both the Pandavas and the sons of Dhritarashtra belong to the same family, but Dhritarashtra's mind is disclosed herein. He deliberately claimed only his sons as Kurus, and he separated the sons of Pandu from the family heritage. One can thus understand the specific position of Dhritarashtra in his relationship with his nephews, the sons of Pandu. As in the paddy field, the unnecessary plants are taken out, so it is expected from the very beginning of these topics that in the religious field of Kurukshetra, where the father of religion, Sri Krishna, was present, the unwanted plants like Dhritarashtra's son Duryodhana and others would be wiped out, and the thoroughly religious person headed by Yudhishthir would be established by the Lord. This is the significance of the words Dharmakshetre and Kurukshetre, apart from their historical and Vedic importance.
Okay, thank you. What we can do, we can all, those who like to read, we can just read one verse, and if there's a purport, and read up to the next purport. That's how we've been doing it on a Friday evening. We've been doing it like this for many years. So here is some points right from the, excuse me, right from the beginning, the signs of certain victory for the Pandavas. One of them is that this battle is taking place in a holy place, Kurukshetra. As we heard, Kurukshetra was the place where the residents of Vrindavan met Krishna after a long time of separation, isn't it? Remember, there was an eclipse. I think it was a lunar eclipse. So everyone went, they all went there, all the residents of Dwarka and Dwarka and others, they all went there. This was before the feud really manifest between the cousins. So, and here now the war is taking place at Kurukshetra. So that's why Dhrtarastra is a little bit concerned that it might have some influence on the outcome of the battle. Yeah. Let me just pick up some things from here, from the commentary by Burijan. Or as we know, he mentions that there's hundreds of millions of people and generals and foot soldiers have gathered. So this is the actual climax of the whole Mahabharata. This is where everyone's focused here on this point here. Yeah, I just read this one paragraph here. It's quite nicely written. The climax of the entire epic is fast approaching. Which valiant soldiers will survive? Which side will win? Will good triumph over evil? Certainly no one's mind at this point is wandering. The battle is about to begin. So it mentions that the first 27 slokas of this chapter are going to set the battlefield scene. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions or reflections on this first verse? Yeah, here again, the Pandavas were excitingly pious. Well, no, not excitingly. They were exceedingly pious. Yeah. And as we said, Dhritarashtra did not want the favorable influence of the Dharma to aid the Pandavas or to influence his sons. Yeah. All right. So next we have.
I just have a question about Sanjaya. His spiritual master was Vyas. It says.
Correct. Yeah.
Is this the Vyas that is an incarnation of Krishna?
Yes. Yes. This is the sannyas that were. This is the Vyasadeva that we're familiar with in the Srimad
Right.
Bhagavatam
Okay.
that we have. Yeah.
Same
And as you know,
Vyas.
as we all know, the king was blind. And as far as I understand, the king is not present in the area of Kurukshetra. He's in his palace, and Sanjaya is relating or will relate the events by his some type of mystic television. So Sanjaya relates all the events to the king, not just what he sees. He can also hear everything as well. He can hear the Krishna speaking Bhagavad Gita. But yeah, he's, as far as I understand, he is a disciple of Vyasadeva, I think. Yeah. Yes. All right. I think this is Varsha Shah. Who's that? That's
Sorry, it's me, Vishalini.
Mother Vishalini. Hare Krishna. So
Hare
you
Krishna,
can
Prabhu.
you can read text. Let's see if there's a purple. Yeah, you can read text 2.
Okay, thank you. Sanjay Vacha Drushtva Pandva Nikam Yudham Duryodhanastada Acharyam Upasangamya Raja Vachanam Abravit. Translation: Sanjay said, O king, after looking over the army arranged in military formation by the sons of Pandu, King Duryodhan went to his teacher and spoke the following words. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Dhrtarastra was blind from birth. Unfortunately, he was also bereft of spiritual vision. He knew very well that his sons were equally blind in the matter of religion, and he was sure that they could never reach an understanding with the Pandavas, who were all pious since birth. Still, he was doubtful about the influence of the place of pilgrimage, and Sanjay could understand his motive in asking about the situation on the battlefield. Sanjay wanted, therefore, to encourage the despondent king, and thus assured him that his sons were not going to make any sort of compromise under the influence of the holy place. Sanjay therefore informed the king that his son Duryodhan, after seeing the military force of the Pandavas, at once went to the commander-in-chief Dronacharya to inform him of the real position. Although Duryodhan is mentioned as the king, he still had to go to the commander on account of the seriousness of the situation. He was therefore quite fit to be a politician. But Duryodhan's diplomatic veneer could not disguise the fear he felt when he saw the military arrangement of the Pandavas.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. So this is one of a main learning point here is, for the whole Mahabharata, is Dhritarashtra, and he's blind physically, but blind spiritually, and he's maddened attachment to his son, especially Dhritarashtra. Does anyone know some of the history of Dhritarashtra's birth?
Was blind at birth because
He
he
blind.
killed.
No, not Dhritarashtra. His son, Duryodhan. Excuse me.
He was born in a pod.
He was born in a pot.
It's like a pod.
Pod.
It was very bad omens when he was born, and I think they said that you need to get rid of him because he's going to bring destruction to the family. And so.
Yeah, exactly that. He was braying like an ass apparently, and when he was born, he wasn't crying like a sweet little baby.
Yeah.
He was crying like an ass. And also, there, as Mother mentioned, there was many other omens and different sages there also could see in the astrology that was done that this son will cause the destruction of your whole family. You know? So they were advising to get rid of him. Exactly what that would entail, I don't know. I don't think it would be to kill him. I don't think that. But to send him away as a young child somewhere else, away from the kingdom. So he wouldn't have no inauspicious effect. But Dhrtarastra was, as a father, you can perhaps might imagine, as it's only natural, he was attached to his son. Well, there was 100 sons were born, yeah. 100 sons were born. There's a whole history behind that as well. And Dhrtarastra was the eldest. I think it was even Narada Muni was advising him. He could see, he could understand what would happen. He could understand the inauspiciousness of this of his son. He was the eldest. He was the firstborn. Duryodhan, you know. So right. So there's Duryodhan here. The last sentence mentions his diplomatic veneer could not disguise the fear. Yeah. When he saw the Pandavas. So remember, there's the Pandavas are outnumbered. I think they have 7 Akshohinis, and the Kauravas or the Kurus have 11 or 12. Yeah. But still, seeing the warriors gathered on the Pandava side, because now it's more clear now who is taking whose side. Before the battle, then the troops would be moving, different armies from different parts of the world would be moving around, would be taking different sides. This is, I think I mentioned before, that this is politics. So when there's an agitation between 2 countries, then different provinces and different places are generally, the leaders are going to want different provinces and countries on their side. So sometimes it's not too sure of who's going to join whose side. But now it's clear. Now it's clear who is on the Pandava side and who is on the Kuru side. And this is the first time that Duryodhan is actually seeing the arrangement of the Pandavas. So they would have arranged different phalanxes, different military arrangements, and it's done very expertly. So he's a bit taken aback by this, but he's going to try to disguise it. Yeah, because he doesn't want to dishearten his father, and he doesn't want to dishearten his troops, and he doesn't want to dishearten himself as well. But still, as it mentioned here, he tried his best to disguise it. But he did feel, when he saw the might of the Pandavas and their military, as it said, and their military arrangement.
Prabhu, I've got a question.
Yes, please. Yeah, any questions? Yeah. Please.
Why is Duryodhan referred as a king?
Why is?
Even though here Duryodhan referred as a king, even though he's not a king yet.
Well, he is unsurreptitiously, or he has claimed himself as the king. He's standing in the position of king, and he's claiming to be king.
Okay.
In the absence of Pandu, isn't it? Even though the Pandavas have arrived, had arrived in their kingdom, and they would be the rightful heirs to the kingdom, Yudhishthira would be, because he's the son of Pandu. Is that right? Yeah, he's the son of Pandu. But this is the whole political intrigue that has happened. Dhrtarastra, and not only him, but his sons support him, and his different supporters are claiming that he is the king.
Okay.
well, really, technically speaking, he has usurped the kingdom from the rightful heirs, which is the Pandavas, which would mean Yudhisthira as the king.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yes, Prabhu.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, let's read text. That was text. Let's read text 3. So there for reading, we have Mabala Bangalatika. You can read text 3.
Yeah. Text 3. Tasyaitam Pandaputranam Acharya Mahitim Jamun Vyadam Drupada Putrena Tavasisyena Dhimata. O my teacher, behold the great army of the sons of Pandu, so expertly arranged by your intelligent disciple, the son of Drupada. Purport. Duryodhana, a great diplomat, wanted to point out the defects of Dronacharya, the great Brahmana commander-in-chief. Dronacharya had some political quarrel with King Drupada, the father of Drupadi, who was Arjuna's wife. As a result of the quarrel, Drupada performed a great sacrifice by which he received the benediction of having a son who could be able to kill Dronacharya. Dronacharya knew this perfectly well, and yet, as a liberal Brahmana, he did not hesitate to impart all his military secrets when the son of Drupada, Dhrstadyumna, was entrusted to him for military education. Now, on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, Dhrstadyumna took the side of the Pandavas, and it was he who had arranged for the military phalanx after having learned the art from Dronacharya. Duryodhana pointed out the mistake of Dronacharya's so that he might be alert and uncompromising in the fighting. By this, he wanted to point out also that he would not be similarly lenient in the battle against the Pandavas, who were also Dronacharya's affectionate students. Arjuna especially was his most affectionate and brilliant student. Duryodhana also warned that such leniency in the fight would lead to defeat.
Okay, so you can hear me? I've been playing around my sound a bit to try and find out what happened.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. So there's a bit of background to this. I don't know if somebody might be familiar with the story or not. It mentioned there's a disagreement between Drupad, and so I just read through that here. Might take 3 minutes or so. Okay, you want to hear this history? So I'll just read it. Duryodhana was a great politician. Yeah, this is. Yeah, let me just read it for you. Drupada and Drona had attended the same Gurukul, even though Drona was the son of a poor Brahmana and Drupad was a prince. Despite the differences in their backgrounds, the two became intimate friends. In a moment of affection, Drupad had once told his friend that when he inherited the kingdom, he would give half to him. Drona took his friend's word to heart. Long after they had graduated and Drona had entered Grihastha life, he found his son crying for milk. Drona was so poor that he could not afford to buy milk for his child. Then he remembered Drupad's promise and thought, let me go to my dear friend Drupad and beg a cow from him. When Drona arrived at Drupad's palace, he was not properly received. Drupad said, I am your friend. Friendship can be recognized only among... he said, I am your friend. Friendship can be recognized only among equals. Get out of here immediately. Drona vowed revenge. Later, he trained both the Kuru and Pandava princes in the military arts, and then asked for his Guru Dakshin. Capture Drupad and bring him before me. The Kauravas offered to try first, but Drupad easily defeated them and sent them back to Drona in embarrassment. Dronacharya was mortified. Arjuna then came forward. The other Pandavas lined up behind him, and he attacked Panchal, Drupad's kingdom. Arjuna captured and bound Drupad in ropes after a fierce battle and carried him to Dronacharya's feet. Dronacharya then took half of Drupad's kingdom and thus made Drupad his enemy. Drupada then performed a sacrifice to obtain a son who would kill Drona. That was, anyone know his name? His son that would kill Drona? Who killed Drona?
Dhrstadyumna.
Dhrstadyumna, that's correct, yeah. Dhrstadyumna, this had later approached Dronacharya. This is when Drona was in meditation after he heard his son was killed, isn't it? Ashwatthama has been killed. That's the whole story as well. So out of respect in memory of his son, he put his weapons down and went into meditation, or doing some prayers. And at that point, Dhrstadyumna killed him. Yeah. So that was, that son was Dhrstadyumna. Dhrstadyumna later approached Dronacharya to study the military science, and as though Dronacharya knew that Dhrstadyumna was specifically empowered to kill him, he did not hesitate to train him. Such is the liberality of a Brahmana. The Brahmana's liberal heart is compared to the sun, which does not withhold its light from the courtyard of anyone, even a thief. Similarly, Dronacharya did not hesitate to impart all his military arts to Dhrstadyumna. All right, so that's a bit of, that's what Prabhupada is referring to do here. That's what we refer to in the purple here. They had differences, and that's the story that goes behind that. Yeah, I'm sure some of you are familiar with that story, or have heard some details of it. But I find it very interesting how Dronacharya, even though he knew that Dhrstadyumna was born to kill him, being such a dutiful Brahmana, he continued to teach him, or he's the one who taught him military arts. Yeah. Any other details someone else knows on that? Any other questions, or any other questions on this? Otherwise, we can go on to text 3. I think this has purple as well. So let's see any readers there. Let me just. Manomohini Gopi, Mother, you can read. Have your hand raised there?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Yeah.
Atra Sutta Mahesh Asa Bhima Arjuna Samayuti Yuyuddhano Viratascha Drupadascha Maharatha. Translation, Prabhupada Prabhupada Ki Jai. Here in this army are many heroic bowmen, equal in fighting to Bhima and Arjuna. Great fighters like Yuyuddhana, Virata, and Drupada. Even though Dhrstadyumna was not a very important obstacle in the face of Dronacharya's very great power in the military art, there were many others who were cause of fear. They are mentioned by Duryodhana as great stumbling blocks on the path of victory, because each and every one of them was as formidable as Bhima and Arjuna. He knew the strength of Bhima.
Which verse are you reading, Mother?
Text 4.
4. Okay, yeah. Sorry, it's my mistake. Yeah, we're on text 4. Carry on.
Is it right? Yeah.
Yes, correct. Yeah.
He knew the strength of Bhima and Arjuna, and thus he compared the others with them.
Yeah, perhaps you can read the next verse as well.
Okay. Dhrstaketusa Chekitana Kasirasya cha Virayavan Purujita Kunti Bhoja cha Savyascha Narapudruva. Translation, Prabhupada Prabhupada Ki Jai. There are also great heroic, powerful fighters like Dhrstaketu, Chekitana, Kashiraja, Purujit, Kunti Bhoja, and Saipya.
Yeah, perhaps read up to text 7. Yeah.
Okay. Yuttamangischa Vikranta, Uttamanjascha Viravavan, Samadro Dhrtascha Sarva Eva Maharatha. There are mighty Yudhyamanyu, the very powerful Uttamanju, the son of Subhadra and the son of Draupadi. All these warriors are great chariot fighters.
Yeah. Okay. Now I just want to do some more reading here. This is in regards to text 4. A bit more history is given, some more details. Now Drupada has been, as is written, he's mentioned to incite, because remember they had that difference. So he's been mentioned to incite Drona's wrath and anger. That's why, again, this is a lot of what's being said here is very politically motivated by, Duryodhana is very clever. So the way he's speaking is very motivated, obviously, to get pregnant, now to get Drona really angry. Yeah. And also Duryodhana also mentions Bhima and Arjuna. Arjuna, as we know, is a powerful warrior. Perhaps he is the most powerful warrior, and he studied under Drona. And he had gone to the heavenly planets, and he fought with Lord Shiva, and he got many celestial weapons. That's written here as well. So he's trying to incite the urgency and importance in order to be attentive in this fight. Now, I'll just read here. Duryodhana, however, was especially afraid of Bhima's fiery temperament and expertise in fighting. Therefore, he mentions his name first. As Bhima was furious with Dhrtarastra's sons, and actually he vowed to kill all of his sons, which he did actually. He vowed to kill all of his sons. Yeah, I mentioned here as well that during the battle, Arjuna and the other Pandavas did have opportunities to kill the sons of Dhrtarastra, but because Bhima had made that vow, then they left it to him to actually kill them. Yeah, but they refrained from doing so to allow Bhima to fulfill his vow. During the battle, Bhima's anger was inflamed. He screamed, jumped up and down, and drank the blood of each of the son of Dhrtarastra that he killed. Even the warriors on the Pandavas side were scared of Bhima when he was angry. Of course, he was very angry at this point. And then Bhima vowed to break Duryodhana's thigh. As you know, when Draupadi was insulted, he slapped his thigh, motioning Draupadi, come and sit on my lap. And that infuriated Bhima. So he's been holding this anger for 13 years. Yeah. So now finally he's getting the chance to let loose his anger. Yeah. And third, Bhima vowed to tear open Dushashan's chest, pry out his heart and drink his blood. Yeah. Dushashan had touched and opened Draupadi's tied and sanctified hair. So for that, Bhima vowed to rip off his arm, which he did. Draupadi had promised to keep her hair untied until she washed it with Dushashan's blood. Bhima later carried that blood upon his hands to Draupadi. Yeah. So Duryodhana named, just reading here, all of these fighters to persuade Dronacharya to free himself from whatever sentiments he felt for the Pandavas and kill them in battle. He then continued to describe the Pandavas' strength. So specifically, he's trying to fire up Dronacharya, because he is one of the most accomplished and one of the most skillful fighters is Drona. But again, he was teaching the Pandavas and he had affection for them, especially for Arjuna. So this is why Duryodhana is speaking like this to Dronacharya. Yeah. And he mentions different warriors as well here. Yeah. So we read up to text 7. That was correct, yeah?
Up to 6, I think.
Up to 6. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's I can read a few verses. Let's add here. Text 7. Ashmakam tu vashishtaye tanniboda dritotama nayaka mama sanyasya shamnatam tan pravimite. Translation. But for your information, O best of the Brahmanas, let me tell you about the captains who are specially qualified to lead my military force. Okay, so he's been looking at the force of the Pandavas. He's become a little bit fearful about their military phalanx, and now he's trying to rally his troops, and especially he's spoken to Drona Acharya to remind him not to have any sentiments for the Pandavas, but to do his duty. So now he's going to speak about his own side, the side of the Kauravas. So text 8. Bhavan Bhishmashtakanascha kripascha samitim jaya ashvatama vikanascha shromdatistateva cha. Translation. There are personalities like you, Bhishma, Kana, Kripa, Ashwatthama, Vikana, and the son of Somadatta called Bhurishrava, who are always victorious in battle. Purple. Duryodhana mentions the exceptional heroes in the battle, all of whom are ever victorious. Vikana is the brother of Duryodhana. Ashwatthama is the son of Drona Acharya. Samodati or Bhurishrava is the son of the king of the Bhalikas. Kana is the half-brother of Arjuna, as he was born of Kunti before her marriage with King Pandu. Kripacharya's twin sister married Drona Acharya. So yeah, I read a little bit of here. There's a little bit, well, there's quite a bit of commentary here. It'd be too much to read, I think. Let me read some sections of it. So Duryodhana was an expert diplomat. He began to describe the Kaurava's strength with the words Bhavan Bhishmashtakanascha. Now, but before he spoke, he was caught in another difficult situation. Facing him were two great warriors. Bhishma was the commander-in-chief of the army, and Drona was his military guru. Whom then should he mention first? Duryodhana was clever. He knew that Bhishma was a Kshatriya and Drona a Brahmana. If he mentioned Bhishma first, Drona Acharya would be insulted. As a Kshatriya, however, Bhishma would honor the etiquette of offering the Brahman more respect. Thus Duryodhana said, Bhavan Bhishmash. There are two personalities like you, Drona Acharya and Bhishma. Then he mentioned Kana. He next mentioned Kana. Bhishma and Kana were enemies. Because Kana thought, what is the use? I will fight and kill everyone, and this aged general will get all the credit. So, as we know, he had vowed not to fight until grandfather Bhishma was killed. Quite an interesting vow he had made there. That's Kshatriya. He was, yeah. And there's lots more notes here, but too long. Any other comments or information there we can add? If not, we can read on. Let's at least try and get to the first 15 slokas today. Then, so text 9. Anye cha pahavasuya mat ate chakta jivataha nana sastra praharanaha savashutta visharada. There are many other heroes who are prepared to lay down their lives for my sake, all of whom are well equipped with different kinds of weapons, and all are experienced in military science. As far as others are concerned, like Jayadratha, as far as the others are concerned, like Jayadratha, Kritavama, and Salya, are all determined to lay down their lives for Duryodhana's sake. In other words, it is already concluded that all of them would die in the battle of Kurukshetra for joining the party of the sinful Duryodhana. Duryodhana was, of course, confident of his victory on account of the above-mentioned combined strength of his friends. Text 10. Apayaptam tadashmakam balam bhishma pivarakshitam prayaptam tu idam etasam balam bhima pivarakshitam. Our strength is immeasurable, and we are perfectly protected by grandfather Bhishma, whereas the strength of the Pandavas, carefully protected by Bhima, is limited. Herein, an estimation of comparative strength is made by Duryodhana. He thinks that by the strength of his armed forces, his is immeasurable, being specifically protected by the most experienced general, grandfather Bhishma. On the other hand, the forces of the Pandavas are limited, being protected by a less experienced general, Bhima, who is like a fig in the presence of Bhishma. Duryodhana was also envious of Bhima, because he knew perfectly well that if he should die at all, he would only be killed by Bhima. But at the same time, he was confident of his victory on account of the presence of Bhishma, who was a far more superior general. His conclusion that he would come out of the battle victorious was well ascertained. Text 11. Ayanneshu chashaveshu yata bhagama vastitaha bhishmam eva pirakshantu bhavanto shava eva hi. All of you must now give full support to grandfather Bhishma as you stand at your respective strategic points of entrance into the phalanx of the army. Duryodhana, after praising the prowess of Bhishma, further considered that others might think that they had been considered less important. So in his usual diplomatic way, he tried to adjust the situation in the above words. He emphasized that Bhishma Dev was undoubtedly the greatest hero, but he was an old man, so everyone must especially think of his protection from all sides. He might become engaged in the fight, and the enemy might take advantage of his full engagement on one side. Therefore, it was important that other heroes not leave their strategic positions and allow the enemy to break the phalanx. Duryodhana clearly felt that the victory of the Kurus depended on the presence of Bhishma Dev. He was confident of the full support of Bhishma Dev and Dronacharya in the battle, because he well knew that they did not even speak a word when Arjuna's wife Draupadi, in a helpless condition, had appealed to them for justice while she was being forced to appear naked in the presence of all the great generals in the assembly. Although he knew that the two generals had some sort of affection for the Pandavas, he hoped that these two generals would now completely give it up, as they had done during the gambling performances. So we'll look at.
Prabhuji, can I ask you?
Yes, please. Yeah, I'm just checking some notes. Yeah.
Why didn't Bhishma Deva and Dronacharya didn't speak when Draupadi was? Yeah. Why didn't they speak? Why did they keep quiet?
Yeah, that question is like asking, why did we fall from the spiritual wealth? It's a very curious and it's a very deep subject that even now there's different discussions on why that actually happened, why they didn't say anything. Sometimes it's said in regards to Bhishma, it's described that his mind was corrupted by Kaurava grains. In other words, he was maintained by the Kauravas. So by that association, when it's mentioned in regards especially taking grains, then although his grandfather Bhishma and he's a knower of all sciences, at that point it was unclear it became unclear to him and all others as well, of what was the right thing to do. So he became, so yeah, that's one of the amazing aspects of that gambling match, that none of the Pandavas actually stood up and protested, and Dronacharya as well. Unless anyone else have Nishinkavachi here. Why didn't Grandfather Bhishma say anything?
Because he knew it was Krishna's pastime.
Huh?
He knew it was Krishna's pastime.
He knew it was Krishna's pastime. Yeah, so Nishinkavachi is saying, yeah, this was the derangement of the Lord. And also, I mean, why didn't, well, Krishna did do something, didn't he?
Yeah.
Krishna supplied all the sari,
Yeah.
so they couldn't actually, but still, it was, yeah, it's a good point that Sringaraj is making, is that all these, even in the beginning, when Duryodhana, a very proud Kshatriya, when he visited the Pandavas' palace, then he was embarrassed because he misunderstood water to be marble, etc. You know that whole episode, and he made a fool of himself, and especially he was besotted and had, you know, very besotted by the wife of the Pandavas, Draupadi, and she laughed and laughed when he made a fool of himself, and that really penetrated his false ego.
Right.
Yeah, so they even they was laughing, and Yudhisthira said they should stop laughing, but Krishna said no, they should carry on. You know, Krishna's kind of he's the orchestrator of events here. So this whole thing is being arranged for the Battle of Kurukshetra. So in other words, we could say, if Bhima, so why didn't Bhima do anything? Well, because he didn't do anything, because Yudhisthira didn't do anything. Yudhisthira is the oldest brother. So unless Yudhisthira had given the indication to tear them to pieces, then he wouldn't do it. He couldn't move without, because he's being obedient to the to Yudhisthira as being the elder, and Bhishma as well. Again, and then if that happened, there would have been no Battle of Kurukshetra. It would all happen then. Bhima would have literally torn them all to pieces on in that very arena. Well, not just them, but Arjuna, if they got out their weapons and started fighting. But again, it's a whole discussion. Anyone else has any insight on that?
Is it because it all had to lead up to the battle?
Yeah, that's what we're saying.
This was all like the bits and pieces, like a jigsaw. All at the end, they all had to come up for the battle. There had to be a good enough reason, or many reasons, to fight.
Yeah. So in other words, many armies had to gather. Excuse me. There's many armies had to gather for this battle, and there was only a few were in that gambling match. There was only a few warriors were there, but there was many demonic armies throughout the world. So Krishna wanted to arrange it that millions and millions and millions of them had gathered on the battlefield. So therefore, so sometimes Krishna does that. He bewilders the mind of his pure devotees, to facilitate his pastime. So then they will become clouded.
Yes.
And another example of someone who became clouded in his understanding was Arjuna at the beginning of the battlefield, at the beginning of the battle, where he was becoming very much he didn't know what to do. He was identifying with his familial relations and was bewildered. And he described that was Krishna's arrangement.
The doubts.
Yeah. So if you do some study in that, you'll find there is many different reasons given why it happened, how it did, even today,
Yeah.
Anyway, perhaps let's just have a look. Let's just 12, 13, 4. Well, let's just stop there. And next week, hopefully we can pick it up next week. Hopefully we can, and I'll try and get that video together. I get it. Yeah.
Prabhu, I've got a question.
Yeah,
Why
please.
was it called Kurukshetra? why was it called Kurukshetra? Is it anything linking with the Kurus?
That I don't know. Kurukshetra, it may be, but I know the history of Kurukshetra goes back thousands and thousands of years. It was actually the place where Parshuram, where there was 5 lakes of blood were formed from all the Chatras he killed. Was it as a Kurukshetra? And then they took on. I mean, at least as far as I understand, these lakes didn't stay as blood. They got transformed into water. But originally that was, and when the all the Vishnus or the Chadavas and Vishnus and the Pandavas, and when they gathered at Kurukshetra, all the Brahmanas would they recited the history of Kurukshetra going back thousands and thousands of years. But he could say there might be a connection with the Kuru dynasty. It seems like there is, but I can't recall it exactly.
Thank you.
Kurukshetra. Yeah. Okay, so sorry about the little video which had no sound. At least it must have looked funny seeing me chanting Hare Krishna. As the sound makes a big difference to it. It's quite dramatic, the sound. So let's try and get that together next week, okay? So thank you everyone for joining us. And till the next, we'll try and get together on Thursday, but I'll keep you informed about that. Yeah? Okay?
There's no class tomorrow?
No, because